I'm very happy to see you all here at our first speaker series of the semester. My name is Alana Nafziger. I'm the graduate student coordinator for the LAEP speaker series, which this series is a wonderful opportunity where we get to interact with remarkable people in and adjacent to the professions of landscape architecture and environmental planning. The program will first hear from our speaker. After that, there will be a brief Q&A, and then we'll reconvene upstairs in the common studio for some refreshments. If you need credit for being here, you can, the Slido will open after the Q&A. Please enter the code found on the wall, then your name, your A number, and each course separated by commas. There's an example there on the whiteboard. If you have any questions or troubles, Deandra can answer them when that time comes. As a land-grant university, we would like to acknowledge that Utah State University campuses and centers reside and operate on the territories of the 8 tribes of Utah. The Logan campus is situated in the Sahivagoi or Willow Valley, the ancestral lands of the northwestern band of the Shoshone Nation, where Shoshone people have stewarded the land since time immemorial and continue to live today. We acknowledge these lands carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. We affirm Indigenous self-governance history, experiences, and the resiliency of the Native people who are still here today. Without a doubt, James Hyatt Studio has created some of the most compelling landscapes in the world. Led by James Hyatt himself, an alum of our very program, the planning and design firm is primarily focused on luxury resorts, upscale communities, and private residential estates. Additionally, the studio has successfully executed evocative retail, mixed-use, and urban residential developments, and worked extensively on environmentally sensitive projects. Known for their luxurious ambiance and exceptional outdoor spaces, the studio's work can be seen at the most exclusive resorts across the United States and throughout the world, including Indonesia, the United Arab Emirates, Belize, China, England, Japan, Mexico, Portugal, and the Caribbean. As an internationally acclaimed designer, James Hyatt has inspired the imagination of those who live within or visit places of his creation. And these timeless environments are what clients have come to expect. He places meticulous attention on detail and finish to create projects that embody the lavish and luxurious sense of place at the world's premier resorts, residential estates, master plan communities, and unique shopping destinations. Mr. Hyatt's projects, long-standing client base, and numerous design awards and accolades simply speak for themselves. But luckily for us, we have him here to speak with us today, and to give us insight into what it takes and his unique career path that which includes global travel and collaborations with renowned architects, interior designers, environmentalists, and rubbing shoulders with the tastemakers of our time. Please join me in a warm welcome for Mr. James Hyatt.
Yeah, okay. Can we turn that off, please? That was awful. Please. Okay. Did you know that you have an incredibly powerful asset that you can put into practice right now as a landscape architect, but it's invisible? I want to tell you how I found this asset. So, in the year 2000, I'm in Denver at EDA, the firm I was a vice president of, based in San Francisco. I was working at my desk in my office, and the phone rang. It turns out it was a well-known international design firm, and they had been hired by the young Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates. His name is Sheikh Hamdan bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and his wife, Her Highness Sheikha Shamsa. They were asked to complete the architecture of a palace and villa in Abu Dhabi. So it turns out the Sheikh had become disillusioned with the architect from Paris who was designing the palace. And so he's hired this firm to take it over. My new interior design friends thought that it would be really great to have a design competition to create the master plan and the landscape architecture for the site. And they wanted me to be part of that group, to compete. So, of course, I was thrilled to be able to compete in this. And, but on the other hand, I started going back and forth about this job, the positives and negatives. On the one hand, like I said, I was thrilled, but on the other hand, I find that I have to spend 3 days in Abu Dhabi, visiting the site, and then working out a design in my hotel room to present to this Sheikh and Sheikha. I mean, it was not something I really wanted to do that much. But so the more I learn about this project, I'm hearing that a lot of design firms don't get paid for their work in the Middle East. So, and I'm the vice president of the biggest landscape architecture firm in the world. That's something I have to really think about and be careful out for. I also, I don't know anything about this country. And working in there, I don't know anything about the culture, the language, the distance, the travel, or the communication issues. And then I'm thinking also, the scope of this project could require a multi-million-dollar design fee. Would they be okay with that? Would they pay that? I don't know. Also, then I was thinking about what are the details of working there? What are the construction practices? Is there a landscape industry there in the year 2000? Plants, where do we get the plants in Abu Dhabi? It's the middle of a desert. So, and then I thought, with the scope of this is going to take years. So there's a lot to consider and a lot of sides to look into. Then I decide I'm going to do it. So I fly to Abu Dhabi, visit the site, and go to the hotel. And for 3 days, I'm pulling all-nighters in my hotel room, papers everywhere, all the while feeling this pressure behind me of creating something great to show this Sheikh and Sheikha that I don't know anything about. So I don't want to fail. I mean, the stakes are too high. But against all odds, I'm awarded the project. And this experience has earned me a lifelong friendship with the Sheikh and Sheikha, the royal family in Abu Dhabi, and their assorted friends. And so, how did this happen? How did I go from being an outsider to being friends with the Sheikh and Sheikha? Because I was willing to do something that most landscape architects are not. And I learned a lesson that I'll never forget for the rest of my career. That one of the most powerful assets that you have as a landscape architecture is your relationship to risk. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So why? In our global society, we often play it safe. We have lots of tools we can rely on, and I think of those tools as assets. And if we compare them all, one of the most powerful assets is how adverse are you to risk? Truly. Ask yourself ask that question to yourself. So most often firms think about the money. They just want to, because they're a business, they need to make sure that we're not going to lose money. And money becomes the only driving factor. Well, I was feeling like, why don't they consider doing more international projects? Because the benefits are so great. Learning a new culture, a new climate, a new way of doing things, and even how the travel and experiences can benefit the people working in the firm and better the firm. I had been doing quite a bit of international work at EDA, and I was kind of disillusioned by how much money controlled everything there. So as a landscape architect, taking some calculated risks with your ideas, and that's really important. I've always thought that we need to really stretch ourselves with our ideas. And it has to be a little bit out there, because if you don't do that, I don't think you're doing your job right, because clients hire you to take them to a place that they don't go on their own. And so if you owe it to them to take them to this place. This practice will really set you apart from your competitors. If you don't embrace risk, you fail. So when we're willing to do this, I think we grow, we expand our business, and we learn. So it's up to you and I to take the big swings, because that's where the payoff is, both personally and professionally. Plus, it's way more fun. One of the most powerful assets you have is your relationship to risk. So why does this matter? And why does this matter now to you all? By embracing calculated risks, we have options. For instance, in the recession of 2008, firms that did international work largely survived. Firms that didn't do international work struggled, and many went out of business. So, I mean, those are good reasons. If we, in regard to calculated risk globally, I mean doing your research to know which countries have favorable financing practices, for example. So for a while, people were all hot on working in India. Turns out you couldn't get money out of India. So firms lost a lot of money. They didn't do their research. They didn't, that was necessary. So knowing your potential client is essential. So you want to know, do they have a reputation for not paying the consultants? I have stories here for that. Do they have bad reputations? I have stories here too. Do they have criminal backgrounds? Stories there for sure. So, calculated risk simply means doing the due diligence and putting in the work to know what you're getting into. You might be thinking, Jim, why should we care about our relationship to risk now? What does this have to do with us? Here's the deal, to quote Biden. If you want to excel in your career and accelerate success, it starts with doing things differently and being willing to adopt a different mindset. A lot of my clients are billionaires, and on occasion, when it's appropriate, I've asked them to some insight on their success. And pretty much the thing I always get is being flexible is the key to their success and to brought them to where they are. or as I put it, move, adapt, or die. For example, when I am working on a design, I'm really hard on myself, and when I work out a design and everything works, but I just feel like something isn't right. It could be better. There's not something special. I'm not risking anything to take somebody to a new place. And so I get excited by that because it makes me more creative. It makes me work harder. And so I think, wow, this is kind of cool. I'm glad that I'm seeing this, that this isn't that great, even though it works. And so, I accept that challenge. And I think the solution, nine times out of 10, is better. So, I mean, when you are struggling with a design and you're not feeling good about it, or you get handed like some raw deals and stuff, just, I know this is a silly saying, but make lemonade out of lemons, and I say that to myself all the time. It happens every week in my office. But also, when you adopt a risk-friendly mindset, and you're being creative, you're not being boring, you attract a larger audience due to the diverse and flexible ideas. And this wonderful relationship with risk means, for example, we are willing to take on large-scale projects that other firms may shy away from, and this can directly affect our business success. If we want to have a different relationship with risk, it starts with making 3 commitments. First one is be obsessed. When I'm doing design work, especially for high-profile people and things, I really work hard to come up with the idea, and I can't stop thinking about it. I think about it in the morning when I'm in the shower. I think about it in the middle of the day. I think about it at night before I go to sleep. I'm picturing I'm working out every little detail, and I'm putting myself in that place. I, literally feel like I'm transporting into this place, and I can really see everything. And I think I can't think of anything else, and I think that's what you have to do. And then so in a word, I'm obsessed. And I think obsession is really good. It takes you to new places. Think about the last test you took. Getting ready for the test, you were probably obsessed with doing well. And so obsession is good. That drives you. In fact, one story I have is I work with 7 individual members of a famous family. I can't say their name, although I can tell you they have a lot of K's in their name. And they'll call me at different times of the day or something, and they're like, Jim, I'm obsessed by that idea you gave me. I can't think of anything else. And I feel so gratified, that they're sharing that obsession and we're on the same, we're thinking the same, that's great. And I love their passion and that they're obsessed with things too, because that's what I am. So I think that the second commitment is be dedicated. And let's be honest, a lot of you here in this room, right here and now, think, of course I'm dedicated. This is my career. This is what I'm doing. But I think your level of dedication is likely very different from what it really takes. And I just want to stress that on you. The being dedicated that I'm talking about, you are so immersed in this world that it becomes your priority. That's what you think about all the time, and you work it out. And I don't come across this very often with employees. I find it quite a rarity. And it's the number one thing to make you successful. I mean, do it. There's a saying that do what they won't. And that's one of my favorite sayings. I think it says a lot. Early in my career, in my first couple jobs, I worked for an architecture firm, and then I worked with a firm that did both landscape and architecture. And because I was planning to become an architect after I was a landscape architect for 3 years, which didn't happen because I kept getting such great projects that I didn't want to go back to school. But I spent my weekends in university libraries reading the history of architecture, art history, graphic design, interior design, fashion design. And this is, I got so much smarter. And you need to understand architecture. And so many landscape architects I work with don't really understand architecture. They don't really study it. They don't care. And it's so important because you need to form a friendship with the architects that you work with. They need to be able to trust you. And the other thing is interior designers get kind of a bad rap, but I've gotten to work with the best interior designers in the world. And they're smart, and they're intellectual, and they get it. They can do landscape design as well as we can many times. And so, I hope you want, this is what I like though, is I love the collaboration between these other design disciplines, because I grow, I get better. And then the clients sense it. And so I get asked to do other things that a landscape architect would never get to ask. So I end up doing architecture sometimes and interiors. And I love it because I think good design is good design. And I don't like the walls between the design professions. I think it should be blended. The best projects blend and those edges. And so if you have an interior designer that's not talking to you, or an architect, and you're just supposed to shrub it up, that's a bad situation. You need to work together with them and be partners and share, comment on their architecture, let them comment on your landscape architecture. That's when you get the best projects. I mean, hands down, the best projects I've worked on, it's always that way. It doesn't work if you're separate. So you gotta do that, and you have to educate your client so that they know, why are you talking together? Why do you have to have a meeting? That's what it's all about. Another thing is travel. With my career, I've been able to travel all over the world, and I learned so much from that. And when people want to go to ASLA conferences or something, I'd rather pay for them to go to Rome or something like that, and I do that because I just feel like you'll learn more rather than talking to other people in your profession. Don't get me wrong, that can be good too, but I feel like travel and experiencing other cultures and other ways of doing things is one of the best things you can do. It's so gratifying and so inspiring. It's something you all should do, like get the hell out of Utah and go see the world. I'm sure a lot of you have. I'm not saying that, but anyway. So that's the next one. I think I was second, being committed, and then the third one, the third commitment, is be remarkable. And so when you think about it, being remarkable simply means being worthy of being remarked upon. So make yourself remarkable. And so if your design is so good that people remember it, that makes you remarkable. When people talk about it and tell their friends about it, that's remarkable. And when people go out of their way to share what they've experienced through your work and your designs, that's amazing. You're remarkable then. And actually, this is how I've gotten most of my work, trying to be remarkable as I can be. And because I want to be remarked upon, my work, and I want my work to it, and I want people to experience it and tell people about it. What would be more gratifying than that? I can't imagine. professionally. One of the things that, so it's been great because I haven't had to do very much marketing. I just get called by referrals. And so because I've worked so hard to be remarkable. There's one project I was just going to bring up. It's a historic boutique hotel in Santa Barbara, Montecito, called the San Ysidro Ranch. And I worked on it years ago, and it's known for its gardens. It's known all over the world, and in Southern California, it's the place to go because of the gardens. And so you can make that kind of thing happen. And actually, I get a call at least once a month from someone who stayed there, and they want me to do a property for them, just based on that one hotel. So that's cool. So I think that what I'd like to do now is just show a few examples of how our relationship to risk has paid off. So I'm going to go into some slides. Yeah, I did that. I put this one first because I thought this might be kind of interesting because this is the palace and villa I talked about. So this is 60 acres, the whole site. This is the Sheikha's villa. This is the Sheikh's palace with a 15-foot wall between the two. And then my design concept was to follow Islamic design. It was an axial design with the 4 rivers of paradise that goes through all these. And then I overlaid it with a very romantic kind of curvy-wurvy English landscape. I mean, I didn't know the Sheikha or anything when I was doing that, but I just thought she's probably very feminine. I just had the feeling, and this is what we could do. So we've got a long canal that goes through here. There's a palm court. There's an amazing Shadar garden here where the waterfalls drop down through here. This is a peacock garden, we called it, with a fountain. The fountain can raise up and down, so it can become a stage. And then I talk about taking a risk. I suggested to the Sheikha that we light this for parties at night from a blimp. And because I was working with a lighting designer in London that could do that. And then we also created a tent big enough in white silk to cover this whole lawn, which is 300 feet diameter. Swimming pools had to be very private because they can't see it. People aren't supposed to be seen in a swimming pool. We have maids' quarters. We have a tent, which is actually a building, and I designed that. And that's what in Ramadan the women get together there. On axes, there's also a mirrored fountain that goes here, and on, and different villas and everything around through here. This is a very stately entrance with, let's see, 8 rows of date palms that go up here with a fountain, and then this runs down a water feature 200 feet long through here. This is his palace. Prince Charles, or King Charles, stays here, and a lot of dignitaries. And then his bedroom has a 200-foot reflecting pool. There's a falconry garden because the men love to do falconry, and they go out that. It's very cool, interesting. A guest house, and on. So after I came back from the competition, this is the drawing I prepared for this. And the other, it was pretty tricky because the water table here is only 30 inches below the surface of the sand. The sand has a real high salt content. I mean, that's why I was worried so much about taking this job. But we worked it out, and you can bring in what they call sweet soil from the mountains, and all that is red sand, but it doesn't have a high salt content. But so these are the kind of things you learn and have to adapt, and you have to learn the plants and which ones can take the environment. It's on the seacoast, and so yeah, tricky. Let's see. This was when I did that same drawing. This is just a perspective showing that peacock garden with the fountain that goes up and down, and the Middle Eastern Shadar garden. Sorry. Yeah, there, up at the top, which is, I really love that fountain. It's great. A few current projects. This is a historic ranch for a very important Houston oil family. This was where they had a ranch on this river bluff, and they raised the most prized Arabians stallions in the world. So this family has sold this ranch, and now we're going to turn it into a resort, a real high-end resort with a lot of Zillige tile from Morocco, and great courtyards and amenities. I'm also working on a guest ranch in Wyoming. This was built around the turn of the century. It's called A-Bar-A Ranch. It's got a waiting list to go here, like for 3 years. And so it hadn't been touched in a long time. And so we're renovating the whole property. I'll be there this coming week. This is another ranch project. This is in Texas for an oil billionaire. This was just a blow up of his house. And there's a long swimming pool that we extended to go out beyond the bluff there. You can see that. He has African game all out here. We've got a thatched roof area where he can sit out there and watch the game. The front entry courtyard, I brought in an artist from Spain, really amazing artist, to do a fountain there in that courtyard. I'm getting mixed up, right in there. And another one in his master bedroom courtyard. This is a bleached Mexican sycamore trees, a huge live oaks around that we brought in. So it's 5,000 acres, this ranch. So we did a lot on this property. And we designed and built a lake, and here's the lake with looking up to the house. Great architect. By the way, that's the little African thatched thing there. We brought in really 200-year-old olive trees from Northern California. This is the pool that's over 100 feet long that juts out over the bluff. Just a few little sort of character shots of things. This is for one of the royal families. I worked for 3 of them. This one was from the royal family from Qatar, and this is a 10-acre estate in Bel Air, California. And so this was a brand new build. Some developer had torn down all the houses that were in here. I think he demolished 4 or 5 houses. And then when the main guard gate's here, and you go up 155 feet here to the entrance court. And then you come out on this big terrace looking down over a pool, water features, and then there's a $40 million sculpture there, right there. And ancient olive trees along here. Yeah, cool project. And a 19,000 square foot guest house. This is on that balcony looking down. That's the Jeff Koons sculpture there. Bringing in the palm trees, bring everything. Everything, there wasn't a tree on the site when I got there. Lily ponds, the pool's completely tiled with tile from Morocco. There's a Frank Gehry sculpture of a grizzly bear here. So it's fun to get to work with all this stuff. Then I did a desert garden there. And this is just an image of that right after the construction. This is a project we're working on in Las Vegas right now, outside Las Vegas. It's a $100 million house. I don't know why I'm telling you budget, sorry. Anyway, whoops. This is the entry. This is the main entry for guests. This is the owner's entry and their garage underneath the house. This is the family entry to go in the garage under the house. This is for caterers and stuff to service parties, guard gate, employee house, employee things. Everything's on structure from all this. This is a Richard Serra sculpture that's been commissioned for this place. It's one of the things that's really fun to do, and I try to do, is incorporate art into the gardens. And we get to do that here. The architect interior designer is a great friend of mine, well-known guy, and has a museum of his own, actually. Here's just some renderings of the house. And again, all on structure, everything. I've worked on a dozen Four Seasons resorts. This is the one on the Big Island, Hualalai. And this was just one of the pools that was designed. This is called the Adult Serenity Pool. That looks out over the beach. This is a beach bar. And I designed all the roof structures, everything, this whole bar area. And I did the master plan for the resort. So this is just a bigger shot of the property. You can see that, the lava rock is really intertwined into the design. There were two Jack Nicklaus golf courses here and Tom Weiskopf golf course. So it's been very successful. The site actually wasn't that great because it was a man-made beach. The good site is up north, the Mauna Kea Resort. But I became really good friends with the owner of this and from Japan, and he took me all over the world doing other projects in Bali and Phuket, everything. This is Four Seasons Resort again, and this is a spa garden, or relaxation area that we put in a very small little area. This is in the spa garden where you you exercise your feet by walking down this stream. And these are massage hales that we did with a wood jacuzzi there on the left. Just another photo of looking back to the hotel in that pool. The architecture was really great. So it was great. It was fun to work with it. We terraced everything down into the site. This is a restaurant area on the artificial beach that works. This is the project I mentioned, the San Ysidro Ranch in Montecito. This is the entry drive, lined with Spanish lavender and old olive trees. And this is the one I said that's known for its gardens, water features, stuff that you're seeing there. And it terraces all the way up and sitting areas and all kinds of stuff, the mountains beyond. And now the client owns all the way back, clear up to this huge ridge on the mountain. So I'm now coming up with a design for that part of the property. These are just some of the bungalows. This is the one J-Lo stays in. Outdoor little intimate dining areas. I love to do these. And then one of the things I do a lot is I just design green on green with really no color, but different tones of green. I feel like it's really sophisticated to do that. But every once in a while, then when you pop a color in there, that it really pops out, So I kind of like doing that. Just more of the gardens there. This is the Four Seasons in Maui. So I did this pool. Actually, they had a big pool that guests were getting in fist fights to get chaise lounges. So they needed another pool, so I did this one. And it had these luxury cabanas. It's an adult pool. And then this is on structure. These are the gardens for the bigger suites. We have a client in Cary, North Carolina. He owns one of the biggest software companies in the world, and he and his wife felt like there was nowhere good in Cary for their friends to come to, so they made their own 5-star hotel. So that's what that is. And this was the entry to the spa that we did. The former owner of Architectural Digest, who sold it to Condé Nast, this was their property. Sorry about this, I'm not mastering this thing very well. This is at the base of the New York Range near Vail, Colorado. And so we have the main lodge, made the water feature, and then tucked back into here we have a whole bunch of guest cabins and with fishing bridges, and it goes on and on. It's an amazing property. This is the entry as you go into the entry courtyard, what you drive through. Another image of that. And this is as you go down, we're starting to see some of the guest cabins there. Bridges, we designed everything outside. This was a project in Malibu. I do a lot of work in Malibu. And anyway, this was the landscape for that. It was supposed to be on the cover of Architectural Digest, but the owner was an idiot, and he knew it wouldn't get to go be on the cover if he put it up for sale, but he didn't care. He put it up for sale. So, the courtyard with stone from England and pot from Bali and all that. So you'd never know there's a house, another neighbor house right there, a real suburban house. The swimming pool with teak decking and dragon tree and Kentia palms. The Peninsula of Beverly Hills was a great project of mine that brought a lot of work. This was opened in 1991. The Peninsula is a very well-known, high-end luxury hotel brand from Hong Kong. So they did their next hotel. Well, they have a couple in China, but they did it at Beverly Hills. So this overlooked Century City, so I decided to step things up, and then you just kind of have more of an infinity view to Century City. That, and then a dining, this is that at night, and a dining terrace designs that we did. This was kind of fun too, because putting art into the landscape, I wanted a piece of sculpture to be a centerpiece of this one garden, and the owner wasn't going to buy $1 million sculpture. So I met this woman whose husband was an architect in Aspen, and she was a great sculptor. And so then she saw my wife and said, "You have the spirit for this sculpture." So she hired her to be the model, and so it's there, and it's kind of fun because they use it for international marketing, and I can be somewhere in the world and I pick up a magazine and there she is on the back of a magazine or something, the ballerina. So everything on this project was on structure. So that's a tricky thing to do. And I've done a lot of structural things in the Middle East as well. This is one of our residential projects, the front entry. A roof terrace off the master bedroom. Sorry, I didn't realize it had the name on it. Sorry. Pool and all that, did all that stuff. This is the property we did in Palm Springs for the same client. Here's the K's. So anyway, sort of self-explanatory. She loves flowers, as you can tell. Moongate, going up to a children's play area. These are fun projects to work on. Lots of budget. This is her residence. This was on the cover of Vanity Fair. And that's a Nara sculpture, very special sculpture. Four Seasons in Scottsdale, Arizona. I ran an office for a firm in Scottsdale and did a lot of work up in the desert. There's a few images of that property overlooking out over Happy Valley. Working with all desert plants that had been saved from when the project was cleared to build this. All the plants were saved and replanted, revegetated. The Four Seasons in Santa Barbara, we're back working on that now. The owner, Ty Warner, who owns Beanie Babies, He closed it down when COVID started because he got in a fight with Four Seasons. So he's finally deciding to open it again. So he's having me refresh it. It's a pretty property. And one thing about Santa Barbara is you can grow anything there. It's amazing. One of our resort projects in Phuket, Thailand, this was for the Japanese client that had the Hawaii resort. We did these villas that step down the hillside, really steep hillside, looking at over the Andaman Sea. So you can see how they terrace down, and very, very steep. And this was a rubber plantation. So there's a lot of rubber trees still left there, which was fascinating, and getting to understand the culture and the whole bit. And then, of course, the landscape industry, you know, it's non-existent in a lot of these places. So it's a lot to work with. This is a resort that just opened, I think, last year that we did in Bali. And it's on a hillside that it all cascades down this hill, the resort, to the beach and out to the sea. And then these are residential timeshare, not timeshare, but residential villas that people want to buy in there. The entry back through here. A lot of woo-woo things, you know, for the Hindus and stuff there that had to be considered. So yeah, there's a aerial looking back. Fun to work there, for sure. You know, all the villas have plunge pools, stuff. You can see the kind of grading we had to do there. And crazy that the vines, you know, covering these huge walls grew so fast. In this canyon too, towards the upper side, we have a spa that terraces down into this gorgeous canyon. This is a current residence that we're working on. These are renderings. It's in Cherry Hills, Colorado. It's a compound of buildings. A lot of fun. Their daughter's a professional soccer player, so the parents built her a soccer field. So these kind of, of course, these kind of renderings do a lot to sell. We have a pond that we use for ice skating in the winter and such. The Broadmoor Hotel, a historic hotel in the early 1900s that was bought by a very wealthy man, and so they brought us in to redo it. We redid the whole entry garden here, which was fairly historical. Just a really pretty property. Here's another one. I got put in charge of this project when I was 26 years old. It was 850-acre, real high-end residential community with a Jack Nicklaus golf course. And I had to come up with all this stuff. And I was way over my head, I have to say. And if I'd go back today, I would probably think, you know, be embarrassed by some of it. But it was an amazing site. And the clubhouse was built around this rock formation, which we called Clubhouse Rock. And then that's Pinnacle Peak, a famous peak in this northern Scottsdale. But I learned a lot about the Sonoran Desert, and I really enjoyed it. There's Clubhouse Rock, and little dining terraces that are tucked up into the rocks. Rattlesnakes love it. This is just a photograph of the site with the golf course. I'm proud of this one because we did the master planning, and we really wrote some guidelines for the city of Scottsdale on how to hillside ordinances and such. But we worked with Taliesin West, with Frank Lloyd Wright's foundation. I worked in their office, and this golf course uses only half as much grass as most golf courses. It's 150 acres of turf, and then everything else is revegetated desert plants. This one, that one will run a national ASLA award. This is an interesting one. I think this is one of my last ones, but this is in Greece. This is the island of Scorpios, which was owned by Aristotle Onassis. And this is where he married Jacqueline Kennedy. Not here, but this is what's being proposed. So I'm working a lot with the architect in New York on this. And this is for a Russian oligarch. So I said, be careful who you work with sometimes. But you can see, yeah, on structure, just crazy stuff. It's not going to be as bare as this. This is just an early rendering, but amazing site and fun to get to go to Greece. That's all.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? And just as a reminder, this microphone does not amplify your voice, so speak loudly.
Thanks, Jim. I just have a question. So doing work so I do research with like thematic design and resort and stuff like that. And one of the things that people tell me is like, in speaking with other designers, they're like, oh, well, if I had the budget that, you get to work with, et cetera, like all my stuff would look like that and whatnot. And I was just wondering if you could talk about like some of the constraints that you have to work with. Because I'm sure you don't get an unlimited budget. Maybe you do, but but like I'm just curious if you could talk about some of the constraints that come on working with projects like this.
Oh yeah, there's a lot, and honestly, there's very few projects that don't have a budget. They're just different sizes budgets, but they're very they want to take care of their money. They have a lot of money, and they have professional project managers that you work with. That are taking care of things and making sure of budgets and things like that. So there's a few that they want what they want and they don't care. They'll pay for it. Like in Greece, that gentleman. What I'm not sure if I'm answering all the questions. What else you say?
Well, just I was wondering what other constraints maybe unique to these types of projects.
Well, for instance, for the Ks in the community that they live in California, there's a very, very strict water restrictions. And so you can only have so much turf and then you can only use so much water. And so it's really buttoned down. And all the projects I do in Malibu are like that too. You can barely have any grass or anything. I mean, the drought is a huge thing out there. And we have to choose, you have different zones as you go out from the house. Up next to the house, you can have things a little bit greener. And if you then 20 feet out, you can maybe have an oak tree or an olive, but you can't have any trees near the house. It just goes on and on. There's tons of restraints to do it. Then you have to figure out how to be creative with all those restraints you've got going on. And then you have to do it for a resort too. And you can imagine, because people need privacy on their outdoor areas and resorts and things like that. And so you've got to, use the right kind of plant material and everything. So I've really become, in my mind, an expert on drought-tolerant planting, but choosing things that make it look really green and lush. So, I don't like the term xeriscape and what it conjures up in people's minds. So I just say it's a low water usage landscape, and people are surprised. Really, this is low water usage? Yeah. So yeah, but there's tons of constraints, and then of course, with the Ks again too, with Kim, you're not allowed to do any grading on her site by the local authorities, and she wants all this stuff, and how are you going to do it? You got to figure it out. I go to hearing after hearing, begging them to let us do little things here and there, and so yeah, it's interesting. It's a lot of work, but I like it.
Other questions?
You mentioned your international experience, and I know that I and many of my fellow students have lived internationally before. How does that impact your work?
It's okay. It works. With email and all that stuff that we have now, it works. But I really, go to the site and meet all the contractors and form relationships. It's one of the things I do with design. I always make the contractors my partners because they know a lot more about the construction and everything than I do. And so I really work with them, and we get a good friendship, and we can text back and forth, call back and forth. And so it works, you know, but sometimes you really wish you could be there because maybe you can't get there at a certain time, but they send pictures all the time. Every night I get a slew of pictures, and then I can look at and say yay or nay, you know, move this a little more and all that, you know, so it's okay. We make it work, yeah.
Okay, I have a quick question. How do you balance your design work with your responsibilities as the president?
Not very well. I have 2 assistants now, but it's tough. You know, I've got a line outside my office door every Monday. You know, Jim, we need you, and da 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 da. You know, and I'm like, no, leave me alone. You know, close the door. Yeah, I got to get other work done. So it's hard. It really is. But I'm hoping with this second assistant I got, it's going to help. But I work a lot of hours. You know, like I'm obsessed, and so it's something I like to do, and my heart's in it, and I don't want to do anything that I don't want to put my name on. When I worked with big firms, like at EDA, it's a big firm, and I worked in the Denver office, but I had a studio of 10 people there. I had a studio of 10 people in San Francisco. I was having to go back and forth, and that was not good but so I like having a smaller firm where I can look at everything that's going out the door. So to me, that's important. I've worked with the big firms, and it's corporate, and there's politics and all that, and I was tired of that. I don't like big firms. So I'm liking having a small firm and being in charge. Yeah.
One more question. It's kind of twofold. One, just amazing work all over the world. So it seems pretty important to you that cultural diversity kind of inspires you as well as the natural landscape. If you could name 2 to 3 places, top 2 to 3 places that you visited that helped kind of inspire your philosophy and your design approach.
Well, because of all my Middle Eastern work, I'm really inspired by Morocco and that part of the world. And I've gotten to go there a lot, and I have tile design there that I bring into these properties. I try to, you know, just celebrate the culture as much as possible, but not necessarily replicate, you know, things. Like on the Sheikha's Palace, I did it in a very Islamic way, but I did it in a very contemporary way as well. And she loved it. She was like, what do you call this design, you know? She wanted a name for it, and, you know, I didn't have a name for it, but I was just trying to honor the culture and do things, but do it really in kind of a clean, interesting way because, you know, she didn't have she had all the money in the world, but in Morocco or places like that, there's a lot of carving and intricate things. But the palace was based on the Alhambra, but they did it, instead of carved stone, it ended up being precast, stuff like that, which was a bummer. But, you know, that it was such an expensive project, that's what they did. And the royal family was okay with that. I wasn't, but yeah, because I like real stone. I love stone. And I go to quarries all over. Last year I was in Turkey going and picking out stone for projects and stuff. That's a real fun part of the job.
As a follow-up, how big is your material library? Based off those projects, I imagine it's pretty large.
It's pretty big, yeah. It's pretty big, yeah. Yeah, I love materials and stuff, yeah. So I get into that.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Oh, Mike. Sorry, Dan.
I would just ask you where you envisioned yourself in your future while you were in college as a student, and then how that changed and become what it is once you graduated.
That's interesting. So, yeah, I've kind of a story about that. So, I was here, and Paul Salisbury taught architectural theory or history, I think it was history, which I love. And then he took a group of us to Northern California, Napa Valley, San Francisco, and everything when we were at the end of our junior year. And we had dinner in a brand new high-rise building in San Francisco. It was the Bank of America. And I was so taken by that. I was like, I'm gonna work with this firm because they, I love the detailing and the precision and all that. I'm just crazy obsessed with that. And so it was the San Francisco office, but I went to Chicago because I had a friend there. And I walked in and I got a job at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, that big architecture firm that did the Bank of America. And so it was disillusioning. It was a firm of over 2,000 people, and I was a number. And all I did was drafting work, and it was fucking boring as hell. It really was. I was drawing little window details with rapidograph pens on Mylar that you have to erase, and it takes the tooth off, and it's just like can't do this. So then they had a layoff of 1,200 people because the economy went down. So that was bad. So then I went to Cambridge to work at the Architects Collaborative, and then they had projects fall through. So then I went to HOK from St. Louis, another big firm, and I was like, why did I do this? This is the same old stuff. I need a firm that I will mentor. I need a mentor. I need a small firm where I can really make a difference and where I can really learn, because I don't want to be just a number in a big firm. So I found this firm where the head guy was a real gentleman, like Hideo Sasaki. That's always my idea of a great gentleman. But anyway, he took me under his wing and he saw something in me, and boom, I just got sent off to do those projects in Arizona and everything. And I ran an office in Arizona, and I was, just a few years out of college. And then I was wanting to go to grad school in architecture, and then I just kept getting great projects, and they were so fun, and I was doing so well, and my designs were getting built left and right. And I had architect friends that, like, I got a door designed last month. That was the best, and I was like, I'm designing whole communities and stuff like that, and I'm learning more than I would learn in grad school. So it took a turn where I didn't expect it would be. And then once I was doing some of these golf course things, and that led into more resort work, and then people would go to the resorts and see things that I'd done, and then call you to help them. And then, sorry. And so anyway, it took me into a whole new field. And then I got higher levels and higher levels and higher levels of clients, and everything, like working for President Bush and doing all these kind of things, and I'd be like sitting across the table from somebody like that, and I felt like Forrest Gump, like, how did I end up here? So I don't know, it just sort of happened, but I feel like partly because I was obsessed, because I was trying to be remarkable, and I was, I was just into excellence, and I love collaborating, and I made myself a nice person to work with to collaborate with and everything, and it just paid off.